Hi everyone, Queeveen here from the comfort of my kitchen. In today's video we are going to talk more about the parade of planets that is coming up this month, as well as the passage of the moon across our sky this month. So the parade of planets, all of the planets on display, has become more and more of a big deal as we get into January. More and more papers and publications are talking about the four planets in the sky and the parade of planets, the alignment, the conjunction. Lots of words getting thrown around fairly indiscriminately. First off, there are four planets in the sky over the course of January. There is no denying that. They're going to look great, and I have talked about how Venus is going to reach its greatest elongation and how Mercury will come up when we get into February, how Mars is passing opposition, and these are all great things. But saying that we have a conjunction, or really even an alignment, that doesn't quite feel right. So let's get to soon, the 12th of January. That's not too far in the future. The moon is in full. All of the planets are in the sky as early as, not quite as early as sunset, but planet is definitely visible. The planet Saturn is definitely visible from the city here, coming up to 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock is fine, even from the city, to see the collection of planets we have in the sky. And I very often show the sky like this. A big, wide field of view. Where is it? 136 degrees of a field of view. Pretty big. Nobody actually sees the sky like this. Well, not without some assistance. No humans, at least. Maybe some herbivores. Maybe some rabbits and other creatures with very big fields of view. Generally, your field of view is going to be a little bit smaller. I'm going to push things a little bit later. We'll get Orion into the sky. There we go. Something like this. Maybe a little bit less. Something like that. So our view of the sky as normal humans, we don't have a huge range of view that's in focus. You know, our periphery can see more, but something like this is how many of us would look around the sky. You know, the Plough or the Big Dipper is a huge region of the sky to the naked eye, even though it looks quite small if you're looking at it using the wide field of view provided by software like Stellarium. So this does mean, for this particular parade of planets, you will be hard-pressed to see all four of them at the same time. We can definitely see Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter there. We can see Jupiter and Mars and the moon here. Seeing Mars and Venus at the same time is going to be tricky. You may be able to catch both of those planets in your periphery if you sort of don't quite focus on the center here, but sort of defocus. Allow your eyes to spot what they can. And of course, using Mars's reddish-orange colour to spot it using your periphery may not work, as your peripheral vision lacks any colour-sensitive cells. Your brain just kind of fills in the gaps with the colours it would expect, and I'm sure your brain would expect a dot in the sky to be a whitish colour rather than the orangey colour of Mars. But regardless, they are all going to be in the sky, even if they are all tricky to see at the same time. This isn't a conjunction or an alignment. If we take a look at Saturn and Venus there, it's not a close conjunction, but sure, it's a conjunction, and they're pretty much in a straight line, nearly. They're on a plane, at least. If you drew a line through Venus and extended it backwards into space, you would hit Saturn. They're not directly aligned from where we are here on Earth. That would be an occultation. We wouldn't be able to see it if they were directly in line. But they are, you know, if we were a little bit higher in the solar system, kind of looking down on Venus, it would be able to block out Saturn if we lined things up right. Technically, if you were able to freely move around space, you'd be able to put almost any of the planets, any pair of planets in line with each other, if you were willing to move around to great distances and go above or below the ecliptic. Speaking of above or below the ecliptic, I mentioned, thanks to the, there we go, spot on, that's nearly spot on anyway. So this is the occultation of Saturn that the moon created when we moved later into the month. So this is still the future. I mentioned that we wouldn't get an occultation of Jupiter because it was too low under the ecliptic, or the moon was too high under the ecliptic. I didn't check at the time, but having now checked, Jupiter is a little bit under the ecliptic. Or at least it was the last time I checked. I'm going to check again here. hopefully. There we go. I think I'll use this one. Is this the better one? There are two different ways to put up the ecliptic. This is J2000. I suppose I'll put up the J. Presumably we're still in J2000, the epoch. Of course, we are a slightly different part of the epoch, but that's fine. So there we go. If we zoom in a little bit, Jupiter is a little under the ecliptic. Not by much, but it is. Mars is significantly above the ecliptic from where we're seeing it here. Saturn is a little under the ecliptic. Venus is pretty much on the ecliptic, but not exactly. It's a little under the ecliptic. Now, of course, these planets, over the course of their orbits, they will, go above and below the ecliptic. We can see that happening with Venus here. Above the ecliptic at the end of the month, under the ecliptic closer to the start of the month, and indeed around today's date as well. So we can see that changing out over time. But let's just say here on the 16th, Venus is exactly on the ecliptic. And it's the only one. It's the only one of the planets that's actually on that line. And sure, you could say this line kind of crosses through Jupiter. You could absolutely create a line that passes through any pair of the planets. But there is no straight line that passes through all four of these planets. They are not in a line. They are not aligned. It is not really an alignment. This conjunction over here is sort of an alignment. This is not. And that's fine. Alignments sound cool. Conjunctions sound cool, and we've got a conjunction. There is sort of an alignment here. I mean, Venus is pretty much in line with Jupiter, and if we drew a different line across the sky, Mars would be in line with Saturn too. But the parade of planets will actually look something like this. A lot of the images associated with the parade of planets, a lot of the things that people are using to show off the parades of planets, they're artists' interpretations at best. At worst, they are artificially generated images that don't really have much construction. They don't have any conscious constructive thought behind them. They're just an assortment of features composed into a visual image. Even an artist's interpretation, they're always going to try and make these things look better, look more visually impressive. If it was just a realistic depiction, it wouldn't be an interpretation, it would just be a copy. And a realistic drawing of the night sky that showed this collection of planets would be amazing. But I just don't think it exists. I don't think there's a single one of them out there. So I'm hoping that this will give a slightly more realistic view of what this is actually going to look like in the sky, and how much of it, even with this very wide field of view, we're barely seeing them all at the same time. We're going to move out into the countryside, as is tradition pretty much on this YouTube channel. I give a demonstration of a dark sky in almost every video, partly to show you what you're missing out on, and partly to show you why you should be writing letters to your local council telling them to fix the issue of light pollution, which we should all be doing. I should be doing it too. This is our view from the countryside. A little bit later, of course, we're going to get a slightly better view here now that it's darker. Venus and Saturn are still comfortably above the horizon here. We've got Jupiter, we've got Mars, we've got, of course, Sirius, we've got Uranus. Very briefly bringing up the constellations, because the planets in our solar system move across the ecliptic, and these zodiacal constellations are those constellations on the ecliptic. If you see a planet in the sky, you found one of the zodiacal constellations. It might be Ophiuchus or Ophiuchus, but that's been dealt with in another video. Both Venus and Saturn there are at the boundary of Aquarius. We'll see Venus moving into Pisces over the next few days. Venus was even more in Aquarius closer to the beginning of the month, but as we get to the end of the month, it will push into Pisces. We can see Jupiter there in Taurus, and that's not going to change. For the planets that are extra or beyond the Earth, planets that are outside our orbit, they're going to pretty much follow the motion of the stars across the sky. It can take months for Jupiter to move out of a constellation like this. For planets that are closer to the sun than we are, their movement is a lot more noticeable. Mars is going to be in Gemini, moving back towards the beginning of the month. It was in Cancer, so we can see Mars's motion there, but even still, from the 16th of January all the way through, looping back around thanks to the opposition of Mars, we can see comfortably into March. Mars is there in Gemini. It was in Cancer closer to the beginning of the month, and I think, yeah, this weekend it should still be in the constellation of Cancer, the Crab. There's Mars in Gemini, Taurus with Jupiter, and Aquarius there with Venus and Saturn, Venus moving into Pisces. Uranus is pretty much in Taurus, it's almost in Aries, and the other constellations in the sky don't have a planet in them at all. I think, yeah, Mercury will be moving up into Aquarius when it becomes visible in February. It won't be in Capricornus because Capricornus will end up behind the sun. So I hope you get to see these planets. I hope you don't feel too misled by any of the images you've seen online. It will be very difficult to see all 4 of the planets at the same time. However, rest assured that if you find one of these planets, you found at least one of the zodiacal constellations, and then you can find some of the others using that. So, as I say, I do hope you get to see these planets. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you will subscribe to my YouTube channel to support future videos of this kind. You can also check out my website, queevinscontent.ie, if you'd like to read some of this information, and hopefully I'll see you back here next time.